You are listening to the Football Diehards podcast with your hosts, Justin Lonero and Bob Harris, sponsored by DraftKings. Sign up now using promo code DIEHARDS, DIEHARDS. Make a first-time $5 deposit, and you'll receive a free $3 ticket.
Hello and welcome to the Football Diehards podcast. I'm your host, Justin Lonero, along with my co-hosts, as always, Mr. Kyle Dvorchak, Mr. Bob Harris. Gentlemen, it is August. Things are warming up for certain. Mr. Harris, what is good in Albuquerque, New Mexico this evening, sir?
We've got kind of almost training camp. Like actual practices are starting. We had Hard Knocks last night. It was kind of enjoyable watching, some of the machinations, watching the scrub tight end tell Anthony Lynn where he could stick his damn job, pretty much. Just some good stuff. It was fun watching, football camaraderie. It's fun seeing the guys on the field. It's great news. Some of the testing information, Dr. Andrew Sills, saying that their positive rate on the testing is way lower than they expected, which is a pretty good sign. Look, we've seen other sports kind of screw this up, right? Well, baseball. I'm talking to you, baseball. And we've seen basketball and hockey do better. We know football is trying like hell to make all this work. And it seems like, at this point, it's early. I know that, a lot of things could change. But, they're heading the right direction. The word was pleasantly surprised is what he used. So on intake at the beginning of training camps, and everyone's getting tested multiple times a day. The test was 1.7% positive, 170 new positives out of almost 10,000, and 1.9% for players. That was just specific to them. And since then they've had 0 positive tests confirmed, so, this is going pretty well. I'm hoping it's good. The overall positive test rate is 0.46%, and 0.81 for the players. They've done 110,000 tests so far. So, that's a, good sign. And a lot of this will be personal responsibility. Something I know Kyle Dvorchak is really big on.
Yeah, so I don't watch Hard Knocks, or at least I haven't watched Hard Knocks. I've watched it in years past. You said a scrub tight end told Anthony Lynn to shove it where the sun don't shine or something. Who was that? Because I will be very disappointed if it's Donald Parham, XFL star. I love Donald Parham. Please don't tell me he's getting into any ruckus.
I want to make sure I say his name right because it can be tricky. He's played with them before. Let me just get the name up here in front of me because I want to say it right.
It doesn't sound like it's Donald Parham. Donald Parham is legitimately awesome.
No, it's not.
He killed the XFL. He was so good in the XFL. He's a crazy athlete, and he dominated. He crushed as like the best yards per game in the season, in his final season of college football in the FCS as a tight end. He's like 6'8" and runs like a 4.5 something. He is so freaking good. And if Hunter Henry gets hurt, I'm gonna be jamming him in the DFS lineups. He's so good.
It's Andrew.
It was probably Ladarius Green.
No, it was no. He doesn't.
Virgil Green.
Andrew Vollert was his name, and he gets called into Lynn's office, for the usual, hey, thanks for working hard and all this stuff. And he says, "You got to be effing kidding me!" And he stood there and kind of like he was about to tear into him. Lynn's no small guy, and they were kind of just like facing off. And he stood there and said, "Man, I think I'm working really hard." And then. So Lynn loved it so much, he goes over to Telesco's office, the GM, and just says, "Man, that's the most fire I seen out of him." And the GM says, "Yeah, when he came in here, he looked at me and he said, 'This is effing BS,' right?" And then stormed out. So he's working out with I think the Packers today. So maybe people saw that. And there's always these personalities. Lynn said he was kind of pissed off at me. I like his fire. And then as he's walking out of Telesco's office, he said, "But it ain't like he's Antonio Gates or anything." So very entertaining though. And man, you get a feel for what these guys are dealing with in terms of the testing. It is pervasive, and the distancing and all the things, they're going to great lengths. Again, I'd like to think that they can pull this off. I know we are all sit around and fret and wring our hands that everything's going to be the worst case possible outcome. Doesn't have to be the worst case possible outcome. Doesn't mean it's going to be great. Doesn't mean there won't be, some outbreaks. Doesn't mean some Sundays are going to be, and maybe Friday nights, and maybe Saturdays, and maybe every damn day, with all the colleges college. But it points, the colleges, the Pac-12, the Big Ten, all these conferences canceling it kind of, and the NFL kind of having things on point is kind of a reminder. It's nice to have a single strategy, right? All these different, collegiate conferences don't have a single strategy. Some of them are bailing. And look, they can't, protect the safety or I want to say guarantee, but nobody's guaranteeing anything. But it's very difficult with these students. So we'll see what's going on here. I like the direction it's heading with the league, still heading for a September 10th showdown with the Texans and Chiefs, and I think that's good. And there's tons of great information out there starting to filter out, not as much as we normally get, but a pretty fair amount. And I guess, I want to take the temperature of the room, as we get started here on the situation everybody's looking at. The guy with the ADP rocket strapped to his ass, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who the minute Damian Williams opted out, shot up to about the 6th, overall pick in fantasy drafts. I don't think, I haven't touched base with you for a little while on this, Justin. So what's your view of him in the middle of the first round? Is that something you're interested in, or is that something you're eager to let somebody else be interested in?
So the allure is obviously the Chiefs offense, and we want a piece of it, right? And we saw what Damian Williams did last year. It was, Andy Reid likes him. I don't know that Damian Williams showed us much outside of the last season or so. Of course, he was buried in Miami, but saw something interesting. So I want to play a little game with you two. Somebody tweeted me something interesting, so I figured I'd share it with you guys. And there is quite a contrast between a lottery pick running back and one taken at the end of the first round, right? So Clyde Edwards-Helaire being that guy, right? Your jaw was on the ground when Rashad Penny got taken in the tail end of the first round by the Seahawks, right? So Sony Michel, how's that work? Doug Martin, 31st. David Wilson, how's that work? Mark Ingram, we can probably give him a thumbs up for his career so far.
Doug Martin gets a thumbs up. Doug Martin crushed for a year or two, and he wasn't on a particularly good team. And then he got killed by injuries. There was something special with him.
It was very short-lived.
Very short.
And that's the point. Look at Sony Michel. The Pats go out and get Lamar Miller. That was kind of why'd you do that? Javid Best, Donald Brown, Beanie Wells. Now, D'Angelo Williams is one of these guys I think we can give a thumbs up to, 27th in the first round. Adai, I think he had a pretty good career. Chris Perry, Kevin Jones, LJ, we love what Larry Johnson did. He was a fantasy stud. Michael Bennett and candidate. So the point is, look, the skill set is there, right? He caught 50, 60 passes with Joe Burrow. We love the Chiefs offense. They're going to throw the football. I don't think their identity is, that of some, like say the Baltimore Ravens, for instance. Andy Reid has had guys like Westbrook in the past. The comp was there. Even though Clyde Edwards-Helaire ran a 4.6, the bottom line is we're going to want some of this Chiefs offense. Fantasy drafts, you're going to be obligated to draft a guy like Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, Helaire. I'm not sure that he's the guy for me. I think running backs, we can all be in agreement. They pop up, they go down. Too high of a premium, too much of an unknown, and I'm probably going to go elsewhere. But I certainly get the allure now that Williams is hurt.
Okay, so let me ask you then, if you don't like him at his ADP, you have to like someone like DeAndre Washington, because even if the Chiefs are obviously going to be a pass-first team, they're also going to be playing in a ton of positive game script. They're probably the best team in the NFL, and it might not be close if we see Lamar Jackson regress as a touchdown passer. So they are going to be experiencing possibly the best game script. And they are efficient at both creating touchdowns and throwing to the running backs. They're top 5 in touchdowns by running backs over the past 3 seasons. Are you interested in DeAndre Washington? Because you have to. I almost think you have to like somebody in this backfield. They're the freaking Chiefs.
I am not, and I suppose if I was, you saw DeAndre Washington just kind of, again, another guy that was buried in Oakland for a while. Much so, I suppose, the path for production for Washington, I guess it would be going as such right now, right, Williams? And it would probably take an injury to Clyde Edwards-Helaire to see any of Washington. But as far as the premium that you are paying for the unknown, I'm not there. I missed on Ezekiel Elliott coming into the NFL. These are guys, he's not your Todd Gurley. He's not, they're scouts. Why did he go at the tail end of the first round? We don't know. Is the talent there? again, at the NFL level, we don't know. Is he on the best offense in football? Yes. Is Damian Williams hurt? Not hurt. He opted out? Yes. So we'll see. He's going to be all right. I guess the better question is, if you take him in the first round, what are your expectations, or what are you content with for production out of him?
What you're doing is you're drafting him at a ceiling, which you're doing with everybody you're drafting at the first
Sure.
round, and you just haven't seen it yet. Let me share with you this. Pete Sweeney, Arrowhead Pride, he talked to him Saturday on the Football Die Hard Show, which is now back on NFL radio. You should listen to that when you get a chance, 5 to 11 p.m. Eastern Time. He says that he felt like DeAndre Washington was a guy they viewed as being capable of cutting into Damian Williams' workload before there was a Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Mm-hmm. So he thinks Washington, who had a pretty good stretch with a 3-game stretch, and maybe when the Chiefs saw him filling in for Josh Jacobs last year, is a guy who's going to play a role, whatever it is. So I think Kyle's point is well taken. If you're not looking to invest in the expensive portion, perhaps the dirt cheap portion is the one.
Definitely.
So I guess, and that, but just your thoughts on that, are we not drafting everyone at their ceiling that we're drafting in the first round?
Yeah, I think the only player you could probably make an argument, maybe 2 to 3 players you can make an argument that you're not. Yeah, Michael Thomas, Christian McCaffrey, because even Christian McCaffrey really busts on touchdowns. Right. He's got the 2 best receiving seasons by a reception season by a running back. So him and Michael Thomas, but otherwise, yes, I think we're drafting Ezekiel Elliott on the assumption that his touchdowns, which are fluky, outweigh the non-Saquon Barkley receiving game. And we're drafting Saquon Barkley on the fact that he is not, last year we saw his receptions actually dip pretty significantly with Daniel Jones. We're drafting him assuming that was more of an anomaly. So maybe not ceiling, but we're drafting him based on at least a sense of optimism. There is some downside that he is just not quite Christian McCaffrey volume levels. And he's on there's very possible that he's on a bad offense. So, yeah, both those guys are getting a bit of optimism baked in because, that is what you do in the first round.
Right.
Yeah,
so,
exactly. I think you're right on.
I'm okay with it. I'm probably not doing it, but I get why you – and, look, I'll probably have a share or 2 of them because I'm drafting a hell of a lot. But honestly, I think there's guys that I like more in that range and maybe guys I like a little after that range. So I'm not, heartbroken when somebody else takes them. Weird thing, too, and maybe associated with this or not, I just noticed on Fantasy Calculator – they change their ADP pretty often. I think it's a 3-day window. And there was a portion on, I think it was Friday, Saturday range, where Ezekiel Elliott was the 7th or 8th player coming off the board. He's back up to 3 now, so all is well. Joe Mixon of the Cincinnati Bengals, we saw the massive workload down the stretch. Even when they were getting their tails whooped, they just handed it to him. They didn't care. And he was pretty damn effective this year. Offensive line upgraded. Brian Callahan, the offensive coordinator, apparently saw the same thing the rest of us saw. He said the plan is to make heavier use of Mixon right out the gate. He gets better as he gets more carries. Justin, are we underdrafting him?
I think if there's any certainty, look, the difference between Joe Mixon and the guy like Clyde Edwards-Helaire is the fact that we know what Joe Mixon is capable of doing. And these numbers were on an atrocious Bengals team. It looks like they're going to be better. The O-line is beefed up. I think Joe Burrow is going to be fantastic. The wide receiver, AJ Green, is healthy now. They're loaded. I think there's some optimism. There's some youth, the newer coaching staff. Joe Mixon, to me, resembles, and I think he's predicated his game on a young Le'Veon Bell. So 350 touches for Joe Mixon on a better Bengals team. He went out 2019 with a bang. I envisioned somewhere around 275 carries, 1,200 yards. The touchdowns might go up. Like Kyle said, they're fluky. He only had 5 last year, but 50, 60 catches. Absolutely. And we've been touting Mixon for a couple seasons now. Top 5 running back potential easily.
Kyle, if they're playing from ahead, how satisfying is that going to be?
Yeah, I think that is the ideal scenario is that both the offensive efficiency improves and that gives him more carries via game script because, last year they were horrible. They were absolutely atrocious. And it was interesting how much he got fed last year, despite the fact they were losing a lot towards the end of the season. What was it? I believe it was Yes, I've got the Ravens game. He carried the ball 30 times and I believe they got murdered that game. They just kind of gave up and were giving it to him. I can't imagine what he will do when they have actual leads. So that is a ceiling for him. But so Joe Burrow is really interesting. Maybe the best college football season ever. Very unassuming, very uninteresting prospect before that, though. So if you believe in Joe Burrow and his final season, which I largely do, but I do think there's a world where he's not as good as that would indicate. If you believe in Joe Burrow, yeah, I think you are buying Mixon at his cost, and I do. So I think Mixon is fine. I'm not incredibly overweight on him, but I do think the volume is what you're buying him for, and the upside that this offense is vastly improved. Turns around to top 10, top 15 offense, really gives him the ceiling to make him worthy of a top 10 pick.
Contract season too, right? I mean,
it is.
So he's going to be looking. So the proverbial carrot is dangling for Joe Mixon. And he's going to want to be paid.
Might get that before.
Yep.
I mean,
Sure.
It's the Bengals, maybe not, but they're not known for their largesse. Le'Veon Bell, Adam Gase talking today how he thinks he can put him in better positions to succeed, that he got him a little bit beat up. They've maybe upgraded the offensive line. We'll see about that. Maybe not so much. Kyle, are you buying into Le'Veon Bell as having any upside at all, or is he merely a volume play?
Yeah, he's merely a volume play, but last year, what we saw, that volume just didn't matter. There's a certain point where an offense can be so bad that even the best volume backs just, they can't do anything. Because a running back is largely the product of the offensive line, the types of runs that are used, the, defenders in the box, and the chance they have at scoring touchdowns. None of those things are looking positive for Le'Veon Bell unless we see a massive turnaround from Sam Darnold. Le'Veon Bell, went, despite being, league high volume, league leading volume, went over 100 total yards just 3 times in a 15-game season. He was 11th in carries and 7th in targets and just did over 100 yards 3 times, and that's combined rushing and receiving. There's just, unless things change, things have to drastically change. And they did fill their offensive line with a lot of depth of good, not great players, but anything is better than what they had last year, really. And Sam Darnold had some positive metrics, but overall, I'm not into any of this Jets offense. They're a team that, I think often you have to be, not often, almost always, you have to be ahead of the curve in fantasy football. You can't be drafting Lamar Jackson this year because last year was the time you needed to get him. So, I don't want to say that I'm going to wait and see with this team. I'm just going to wait. I'm not, if they come out and defy expectations, that'll be my loss, but I really don't see that in their future. So no, I'm not buying Le'Veon Bell.
Unless it's the Jamison Crowder play in the double-digit rounds. Justin, best shape of his career talk from Le'Veon Bell today, 215 pounds, hasn't been that light since high school. Are you with Kyle? Just doesn't matter?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I mean, we like the fact that he's light, and obviously we're clinging to the Le'Veon Bell from the Pittsburgh Steelers days where, just lived on the field. I mean, he's a complete back. I just think the situation's terrible. And out goes Robbie Anderson. Your wide receiver one now is Rashad Perriman. I mean, it's not ideal. So regardless of the volume, like Kyle said, I mean, he didn't rush for 100 yards once. And it's just not a team that's going to move the football at all. Do I want to pay for him round 3 still? Right? Is he right around right? Is his ADP right round 3 tonight? Right in that range. I'm not there. I think he's a top 20 back. I think there are other options in that range that I'll take. I mean, he's 28 years old. I think we've seen the best yet, and it's largely because he's on the New York Jets.
All right, there has been news, not all of it good. We'll start out with some of that in the Washington football team, where Darius Geis, go ahead and assume we'll not be seeing him playing anytime ever, in my estimation, but, that could change. In the meantime, that leaves guys who are playing, the list including Adrian Peterson, Peyton Barber, Bryce Love, who passed his physical, not on the PUP, and the receiving backs, J.D. McKissick and the rookie Antonio Gibson. Justin, who are you buying here and why?
It's you give up on AD. I mean, he's been serviceable the past couple of years, right? But it's not going to be Peyton Barber. It's probably going to be Gibson. This is a guy that he could be the third down guy, like we saw Chris Thompson thrive in Washington for a little bit. I'll take some Chris Thompson production late. I think that they're going to need some type of spark. I think he's the guy that can do it. Now, Bryce Love is an interesting guy. I mean, this guy that ran for over 2,000 yards his junior year at Stanford, rolled the dice and screwed up his ACL his senior season. So I'm not going to throw in the towel on Bryce Love. I think they have some confidence in him. It's not going to be J.D. McKissick. I think we know what Peyton Barber is, your prototypical plotter. And AD, kind of like Frank Gore just doesn't want to go away. I mean, he's had a better career than Frank Gore.
I don't know.
But
pretty good careers, both of them. Quit the
love
Frank
them both.
Gore slander, Justin.
No, Frank Gore's my boy. But I mean,
in
terms of greats, so it's going to be Gibson first and foremost, and then if I can have Bryce Love for free, absolutely, I'd like to see more of them. But again, you mentioned right off the bat that it's crowded there, so it'll be interesting to see how these carries and touches are dispersed.
Kyle, take the time to correct or affirm what Justin just said.
Yeah, I really get the Antonio Gibson love. Like, he is a really, really interesting prospect at 6 foot 228, runs a 4.39. Like, that is incredible athleticism, and he showed all of that athleticism in college by not getting a ton of volume, but man, he crushed whenever he got the chance. Like, he was averaging 11.2 yards per carry. He didn't really play at, like, almost any running back. He was largely just a Swiss Army knife roll, but man, he killed it in that Swiss Army knife roll. Goes over 1,000 yards from scrimmage on, less than 71 touches. That is insane to do that. He has prowess as a receiver, and that is going to be really interesting from this team, where I don't really see many backs that I think have receiving prowess. I actually do think Adrian Peterson, he looks like he's still got some juice. He's never been a great receiver, though. He definitely isn't going to be now at the age of 33 or something. So yeah, he has a lot of interesting prowess there, and their receiving core looks pretty scuffed, given that they are now without oh man, why am I blanking on his name? Who's the second-year player towards ACL?
Where at?
Washington. Their second-year player. It's killing me.
Bryce Love?
No, Bryce Love towards ACL at a different time. Their receiver.
Let me see. Let me think
Kelvin
about this.
Harmon. Kelvin Harmon.
Sorry.
Yeah, Kelvin Harmon was vaguely in line for a starting role, because their receiving core is Steven Sims, who flashed a bit last year but really didn't come into the NFL as a prolific prospect, and Trey Quinn, who is probably exclusively playing slot. Who do they have playing outside? I do think we could see some Antonio Gibson playing wide receiver, but these Tavon Austin style players are just not what I'm targeting. I do think that could end up being his ceiling. Maybe his ceiling is Tariq Cohen, which is good, but I think at this point it looks like you're going to be paying 7th, 8th round for him. Adrian Peterson is the better value in this backfield by far. Still looked like he had some juice last season, and this offense is, at least I would imagine, going to improve. I don't think it'll be very good, but they're going to improve, which should help a grinder style back like Adrian Peterson.
How sad is it we've already forgotten young Kelvin Harmon, who was hurt in July, the middle of July, getting ready for training camp. Kelvin, we hardly knew ye. And by the way, I loved Antonio Gibson last year when his name was Jalen Hurd. Maybe we'll see some of that in San Francisco this year. And we're going to get to that San Francisco backfield, but first we're going to get Justin all excited here. Because it's New England. His Patriots have added Lamar Miller. Look, we've all known Sony Michel on the PUP list. This leaves them a lot of options with him. They can take him off the PUP list if he gets better. They can release him if he doesn't get better. They have other guys, Damian Harris. I don't know. The Patriots, well known for their reclamation projects. Corey Dillon somewhere is nodding quietly. Yes, Lamar. Yes, Lamar. Go. All right, Justin, break it down.
So first and foremost, Lamar Miller is not Corey Dillon. And Lamar Miller absolutely killed me last year in terms of best balls. I had a ton of them, and he broke our hearts. It seems like a typical signing for the Patriots. It's just, if you want to talk about crowded backfields, it's going to be Sony Michel's football. He's healing. He's going to be the starter. But the only real bona fide guy there is Ben, and probably will be James White, for certain. But you still have Damian Harris. The jury's out. You still have Rex Burkhead. I don't think they're going to be able to keep all these guys. You still have Bolden, who finds his way back to New England every couple of years. So it is crowded, to say the least. We're going to list them. It's going to be James White. I mean, you know what you're getting. I always said every team needs a Duke Johnson. They yearn for that. I think James White has kind of, laid the groundwork for these receiving backs. Doesn't have a ton of carries, but, James White is going to get 60, 70 receptions for certain, especially with this ambiguous quarterback scenario. I don't know who's going to be the starter there. And then Sony Michel's probably going to have 225 carries behind a healthy offensive line. But who knows? I mean, everybody is just kind of fallen out of the equation. In New England, we've seen this. Nobody wants to play for the past now that Tom Brady's gone, and they're opting out. So, you guys are under the impression it's the Trevor Lawrence sweepstakes. So I think they're going to be forced to run the ball. And right now the O-line's a lot better. But how that will be, I don't know.
I'm a little worried losing a fullback for the second year. James Devlin retired. Then they signed Dan Vitale from the Green Bay Packers. He was one of the opt-outs. Brandon Bolden, another opt-out. First of all, Kyle, tell Justin who's going to be starting at quarterback for the New England Patriots.
It's going to be Cam Newton.
I don't know.
Do you really think Cam Newton wouldn't start?
I would like to. I'd be curious to see what he can comprehend. I want to see. They're gonna have to dumb it down. You're grooming Jarrett Stidham. I don't know. I think it's a great question. I think Cam Newton is going to put. I was going to say butts in seats, but that doesn't look right. That's not
Jarrett Stidham was so bad last year. He got benched while being a backup.
Yeah,
he came in and threw the one pick six and we can't do this.
And then Brian Hoyer shows up.
I get it, but it is. You have to understand, Kyle. It is to comprehend Bill's playbook. You have to have that level of wit. Beyond.
I'm gonna stop you right now.
Go ahead.
Why do you think they're going to use Bill's playbook? This is the best coaching staff in the NFL. Do you think they can't figure out a way to use Cam Newton in short order? Come on.
All right, absolutely. So how healthy is he? I think that's number one. That's number one. How healthy is he?
I'll buy that one.
Can he come to a place like New England after, being in Carolina, different market and thriving at this point in his career? I don't know. I mean, we've seen vintage Cam Newton. We love Cam Newton. But it's going to be a tough task, and it'll certainly be interesting to see. I was told the other day, Fred Smerlas is an old Patriots guy. Bill said the turning point for Tom Brady to leave New England was Bill said that he was going to have to fight Jarrett Stidham for the starting job, and that was the icebreaker.
Right?
But that was.
I think your buddy contracted a little bit of that coronavirus. It's getting in his brain. That might be the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
But I believe he contracted it down at the.
Imagine hearing that, though. Imagine hearing that. If you're Tom Brady, you're like, wait, what? Like, no.
I don't think Tom Brady heard that. I'm pretty sure he did not hear that. I don't know. Fred Smerlas is an old guy like me. We sometimes tell stories.
Just saying.
Kyle, tell me why James White is the guy I want to invest in. Make the case if you can.
Yeah, so I think Cam Newton gets this bad rap as a guy who's not going to check down to his quarterback or his running back, but his running backs until it would have been his penultimate season with the team were Jonathan Stewart and the corpse of D'Angelo Williams. He wasn't going to check down to those guys because that's not optimal when you're a quarterback. As opposed to, we saw him, he was fine beating Christian McCaffrey. I think talented running backs at catching the ball are going to get targeted because they get open and they make plays in space, not because Cam Newton decides can't throw it less than 5 yards down the field. Also, in his final season as a starter, Cam Newton had his lowest ADOT of his career, I believe, and it was the only season he had a positive completion percentage over expectations. Just adjust your completion percentage based on if you're going deep or short. Deep passes are hard to complete. If you do it at an above average rate, you're probably good. So he went short and was effective above average at going short. He's a fine dink and dunk passer. He should, I believe, the melding of his style to New England's typical scheme is not going to be that difficult, and I don't think we're going to see that much of a change. He will not be as efficient as Tom Brady. That is very no disputes with that, but I think he is going to be able to fit in this offense better than people think. So yeah, James White probably the best and safest value here. I don't mind either of Lamar or Damian Harris. It's because both
just
like
to know which one, right?
Yeah, it's difficult right now, but both of them are cheap is kind of the operating point I'm working on, and that has been the go-to for Patriots running backs literally for years in a row, is you buy the cheapest one, and one, it's kind of a funny adage to go by, but two, it's probably because Bill knows that running backs are roughly interchangeable. That's why he's fine with bringing in Lamar Miller, who didn't play any of last year, to potentially start week one if Sony Michel is hurt, and it really does look like he is 50-50 to even be ready for week one. Could start on the pup list. I will have 0 Sony Michel. I'm fine with sprinkling in some Damian or some Lamar Miller in the final rounds, but really where any meaningful fantasy points are going to lie is most likely James White.
I'm going to say I had some shares of Sony Michel. I promised myself I would draft 0 Sony Michel. The price got too cheap. You guys know I have that weakness for all things cheap, and I bought some, and now I feel miserable about it. Another guy who's like a little down the list a little bit, Nick Chubb. Lost out the NFL rushing title last season to Derrick Henry last week. He says he's motivated by this. They've upgraded the offensive line. But here comes Cleveland Plain Dealer staffer Ellis Williams trying to tell me that new coach Kevin Stefanski needs to run the ball 30 times a game, and he needs to split the carries evenly between Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. Kyle, that's your neck of the woods. Tell us why this is balderdash.
Well, he told you that both the two running backs on the same team were going to average 15 carries a game right after he told Tom Brady that Jared Stidham was coming for his job. Yeah, that's just, it's unrealistic to see, like, that just doesn't happen. Like, it's, one of these guys is going to be the lead back and one of them is going to get less carries. Nick Chubb is going to be the lead back, but I really don't see him having, like, the receiving ceiling that I'm looking for in the late first, like this 1-2 turn. And Kareem Hunt, probably one of the most, if not the most expensive handcuff, but he was averaging like over 4 receptions a game in his 8 games with the team. He was getting like 10 touches a game. I think it's expensive to buy him as like purely as either a handcuff or as either this satellite back, almost Tariq Cohen type role, but he has the Venn diagram that contains both. And man, if Nick Chubb goes down, that I can't imagine like anyone else behind them is really getting much work. When Kareem Hunt, we've seen how dominant he can be when he was with the Chiefs. Like he has this awesome 3-down skill set that, like, it appears as though, like, Nick Chubb doesn't even have. Nick Chubb is probably the better peer between the tackles rusher. He's really elite in that role. But if he were to go down, man, Kareem Hunt is going to print. I'm fine with buying him, especially in, like, in the, like, best ball championship style events, where if Nick Chubb goes down in a season that, like, we could very much see running backs not go down with injury necessarily, but just like, man, you pull up a Friday coronavirus test and the backup assumes so much work. Like, I think that does make a lot of sense to be favoring these 0 RB style late backs. And Kareem Hunt is probably going to have to be your first or second one if that's your approach. But in tournament settings, his upside is unreal. I don't mind paying for it. In like your standard leagues, not so much. He's probably fine where he's going, but I really do think his upside is like second to none.
Justin, Nick Chubb 203, Kareem Hunt 506 is a pretty high handcuff premium. Are you nibbling on Hunt as a standalone play? No matter what the format is that a price range? Some of the guys going in that range, Mark Ingram, Devin Singletary, David Montgomery going right before, Raheem Mostert going right before, DeAndre Smith and Ronald Jones, Cam Akers, James White right after. Is Kareem Hunt fairly priced?
Yeah, and if I draft Nick Chubb and pay that premium, then I'm probably going to back it up with some Kareem Hunt. Look, he's 25 years old. By the way, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, if I'm paying a first-round premium for him, I want that 2017 Kareem Hunt version of him in Kansas City. So that's what I'm going to need, 1,300 rushing yards, almost 455 receiving yards. So, and when they closed out 2019, the carries were nearly split. When you look at the passing game, that's going to be split in half, like Kyle said. So your boy Matt Waldman absolutely nailed Nick Chubb a couple years ago.
He did.
He nailed it, and there was some uncertainty about him. I mean, he showed up. So did Kareem Hunt, and it's going to be a hell of a 1-2 punch. I don't know how you can't keep Kareem Hunt on the field. They might be on the field at the same time, but as far as like a handcuff, I know that word is subjective, and some people have their different opinion regarding it. I would say that Hunt's the guy, especially at 25 years old. I don't know that I want Nick Chubb at this point in time in the first round, early second round. I think that's high given the fact that Kareem Hunt's on the same team as him, because I think this could be a committee, new coaching staff. They're going to run the football. It's scary. But like Kyle said, if Nick Chubb goes down, the ceiling, and we've seen it, and he's only 25 years old.
All right, Justin, in the Colts, a lot of talk today. Frank Reich, made it clear that Marlon Mack is still the starter because, of course, he is. He's the veteran. Jonathan Taylor comes in. Fantasy players still drafting Taylor first, but the price becoming more reasonable. 403 for him. Mack is 703. And Nyheim Hines is in there as well, let's say about 13th round. If you're buying shares right now, which shares are you buying?
It's going to be Marlon Mack, 24 years old. I know that's everybody's reaction, but the reality is, here's the thing. Nyheim Hines is your poor man's James White. We get it. He's going to be involved in the passing game. We like Hines for free, but do not disregard Marlon Mack's involvement last season. 247 carries, The issue is the lack of involvement in the passing game, but I think it is his backfield. I mean, come on, rookie. I get it. JT is more of a well-rounded running back. I just can't envision Jonathan Taylor coming in and just pushing Marlon Mack to the side. It's going to be a great offensive line. We know that. They're going to pound the football. If Phillip Rivers shows up like he did last year, they're going to need to run the football more. And again, another 1-2 punch. Cannot envision paying a Jonathan Taylor somewhat of a premium with uncertainty, not Clyde Edwards-Helaire diciness. Marlon Mack just ran for 1,000 yards. Like, he's not going to, in 14 games, he's not just going to go to the side. So this is going to be one of those situations where I'll take Marlon Mack at the discount, and I have had several times. So they're both going to get the football, but 15 and maybe a split, maybe an even split at first anyway.
They're calling it a 1-1 punch. I'm investing in nobody but Jonathan Taylor. Naheem Hines late. Kyle, why am I stupid and Justin is the genius?
Yeah, I don't think, Jonathan Taylor is one of the better prospects of the past decade. 2,000 yards from scrimmage in 3 straight seasons, then as an early declare. Peaked his receiving usage over 20 receptions in his final season, so kind of rounded out that edge. And then to run under a 4.4 at his size. He is the complete package. My only problem is that the team continues to say that he is not going to get this, voluminous workload from early in the season. If you trot him out week 1 and he gets 9-10 carries, then you bench him week 2, week 3. You're holding a guy who you paid a 4th-round pick for 3 to 4 weeks, while also probably taking a loss, or at least taking a loss in that position week 1. I just think the risk that you end up having an unusable asset for a quarter of the season, a third of the season, half the season even, is quite high for a guy you have to take in the 4th round. I love Jonathan Taylor. One of my, I was surprised how disputed it was that he was the 101 prospect as before the draft. But yeah, I don't think redraft is where I'm going to be having really any exposure to him.
We will see how that one plays out. There are other backfields, and one that I find most interesting all of a sudden is San Francisco, where Jerick McKinnon suddenly become the best player on planet Earth. If you listen to his teammates, and Raheem Mostert, listening to Matt Barrows from The Athletic, remind everyone, look, he never started last year. He played more, but they liked Tevin Coleman early in games. So are we, Kyle, investing properly in this backfield at this point? By the way, Jerick McKinnon's still in the 14th round. That'll probably start climbing because I've been throwing a lot of last round picks at him. I'll start driving that ADP up by myself because I have a dynasty share or two and I want to turn it into something by drafting the hell out of him.
The clock is ticking, and it has been for about a decade.
Yeah, Raheem Mostert, you're right, Justin, and it's been 2 years since we've seen him, but Raheem Mostert was down around that 7th round range a little while ago, when he was asking for the trade. Now he's got the deal. Now he's back up to 503. Tevin Coleman a fair amount later. How is this one playing out in your mind?
Always. It often ends up being the case that we overestimate our ability to delineate between starters, backups, and the general split of a committee. And we saw a handful of games, a half season or less from Raheem Mostert. We've seen this story play out before with guys like Justin Forsett, guys like C.J. Anderson. And I don't deny that he didn't kill it in those games, including into the playoffs. But that doesn't, that's such a small sample to work with when Tevin Coleman is the guy that this team financially invested more in, despite the, Raheem Mostert small contract bump. But it doesn't negate the fact that Tevin Coleman was running as the primary back in the first week of the playoffs, that he did that multiple times earlier in the season. I just think the split is going to be much closer than people think, and Raheem Mostert was just not getting any work as a receiver, at least as a receiver out of the backfield. So for me, Mostert was incredible last year, but that was probably the time to invest in him, was to pick him up and get him into your lineup. This year, I'm just going to side with the lower cost of uncertainty in Tevin Coleman. And yeah, Jerick McKinnon's pretty fine late round pick too. Seems to have an all around skill set if he could just stay healthy, which seems unlikely. But I don't know, man. They say he's looking healthy this year. I of course I have dynasty shares of Jerick McKinnon too. If you played dynasty long enough, you got him, man. He is so yeah. I'll be rooting for him. I don't know about investing much in him anymore.
Right. So Justin, my love for McKinnon is irrational. I totally admit that. Tell me what a realistic expectation is for him.
I don't know. I have a picture of Jerick McKinnon embedded in my head with the Minnesota Vikings buried behind Adrian Peterson, which was 5 years ago.
Still contributing. but still contributing. So
they backed up the Brinks truck, and San Francisco threw a lot of money at him. And in the meantime, the Matt Breidas of the world have been in play. Raheem Mostert undrafted, and most recently Tevin Coleman. I mean, we saw Tevin Coleman in Atlanta play with Devontae Freeman, and like if one of these guys could break away from each other, well, Coleman did. I think they used him more in the second half of the season. Started, but let's be honest with each other. Even though Matt Breida is out of the equation, it appears to be another committee. For me, it's going to be Tevin Coleman because he's Shanahan's guy. I have given up on Jerick McKinnon. I mean, he's pushing 30 now, which is making me feel old. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just saying, and I agree. I think Tevin Coleman is his guy. Raheem Mostert's been on 7 teams and had a great 5-game stretch. And
his ADP's too high, Mostert.
Yeah, right. But if you're thinking Shanahan, if McKinnon isn't Shanahan's guy, then you can't count the money. To me, they got a pretty sweet deal on Coleman, and I agree with you. The usage we saw that in Atlanta, where he shared with Devonta Freeman, had a super good season. And I've kind of been expecting to see that guy. I just haven't seen him yet, and I'd like to see it a little more. But every time I talk to a beat writer during the season from San Francisco, and I try to pigeonhole them on the running back situation, even when it looked like, look, Mostert's the guy. Every beat writer, no, man, they're going to do the okey doke anytime now. They were all expecting it every single week. They expected the running back okey doke from Shanahan. And I think the fact that we didn't get it late in the season was in and of itself an okey doke. That's Shanahan's are evil. Miami, you mentioned Matt Breida, Justin. We had some reporting from Cameron Wolf of ESPN suggesting like maybe a 50% workload for Jordan Howard, a 35% workload for Matt Breida, and about 15% for some of the other guys, the outliers, including the mighty Kalen Ballage. So Matt Breida, the price right now, they're about 2 picks apart. They're both like right in the middle of the 7th round. Is this a matter of roster construction? Like if you need maybe a heavier workload guy, you play it safe with Jordan. If you've already got the heavy workload guys, then maybe you can pivot over to Breida and hope the big playability comes through in Chan Gailey's spread offense.
I don't know that I want either of them, to be honest with you. And if I wanted one, it's probably going to be Breida. But neither of these guys have shown us a ton of work in the passing game. Tonight, it's looking like a split. And why wouldn't it? You have they're both 2 guys that can handle volume, bigger backs. It's a fade for me, and it's largely predicated on the game scripts that are going to occur in Miami, and they're probably not going to be good ones. I had a fun tweet a couple hours ago. Ryan Fitzpatrick led the Dolphins in rushing last year, rushing yards, 240 yards. I mean, that's a measure of how bad this team's going to be, and it's not going to be resolved. So for free, yeah, I mean, we're gonna cling to the Matt Breida moments he had in San Francisco. Everybody's had those moments, and then some of us are gonna cling to the Jordan Howard Chicago Bears days, which I think were fantastic, by the way. That's going on unnoticed. They went out and they drafted David Montgomery, who's basically the same guy. So it's a fade for me. Free is for me as well. So I'll take either of these guys if I have the roster depth. I think they're more DFS plays based on the health of either of them. I mean, if Breida were to go down, we'd see more Jordan Howard and vice versa. But team, timeshare, it's a foul taste. I mean, Miami is bad, and they will remain bad.
I don't think Ryan Fitzpatrick will lead the team in rushing this year, though. Kyle, Chan Gailey, last time he ran an NFL offense was in 2016, the New York Jets. The Jets finished 12th in rushing with Matt Forte, getting the bulk of the workload, 218 carries, 30 catches. Bilal Powell getting 131 carries, 58 catches in a 2-back system. Any interest for you? Do you think they can replicate this in Miami, or is the team just so horrible that running is kind of moot for them?
Yeah, I think this backfield should be determined by roster construction. If you want to build a roster that doesn't score a lot of fantasy points, loses a lot of games, and you get made fun of at work, go ahead and invest whatever you want in Miami backs. Their best running back, you get 16 games and you have multiple running backs playing every week, and their best running back game was the running back 20 on the week. They couldn't produce one really above average week out of their running backs, despite having what appears to be Kenyon Drake being a rather talented back, despite having Patrick Laird, who has a very fantasy friendly skill set in getting a lot of receptions on the team. They couldn't produce any real great fantasy weeks, and they also came so sporadically that if you were starting them, you were probably catching multiple 4-point games on the outsides of that one 14-point game. And this offense, it's not like they're not like a great offense either. I think Ryan Fitzpatrick gets this moniker as like almost Jameis Winston style because we saw him play along Jameis Winston. He had a great year that year, but he was not particularly efficient last year. They were just losing a lot. He turned the ball over some, and they got to throw a lot. He wasn't particularly efficient. This offense isn't very good. They have a horrible strength of schedule this year. Their offensive line isn't very good, but I can't imagine investing in either of these guys. Fade players from bad teams is a good rule of thumb, and I am 100% sticking with it this year.
I believe when we've hit the Patrick Laird mention, it's time to call it a night. So we will do that. We will first of all, let me just say, when Jarrett Stidham turns into the next Tom Brady, which, let's face it, the Patriots have a history of doing this. It's called Tom Brady, and it worked well for them. We all owe Justin a beer, and by all of us, I mean everyone who listened and laughed along with me and Kyle at the Fred Smirlis thing. So we will be looking for that, Justin, and look, it's the Patriots. Anything is possible there. Meanwhile, the August update is up and running, our preseason draft component for our premium content. Check it out. If you don't go to Football Diehards or you have not gone there, go to footballdiehards.com/free trial and take a tour. See what we got going on. All kinds of great stuff and great content up there. Rankings, tools, all kinds of fun stuff. And that only gets better when the season starts. So check it out. The digital magazine is also part of the equation there. And you'll even find Kyle and Justin in those fine publications beaming gleefully from their commentary. And if you are already a subscriber but you haven't signed up yet, go to Football Diehards and use the promo code DIEHARDS when you put in your order to get a 15% discount. Beyond that, guys, I think we've done everything we can do. It's Patrick Laird season.
Patrick Laird season indeed, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. We will catch you, pretty much weekly going from here on out. Excited to get into whatever we have in store for the football season. So for myself at Kyle Tweets here on Twitter, for Bob at Football Diehard, and for Justin at Justin Lonero, we will catch you next week. Thanks for tuning in.